We have a lot of seeds, and we need to know what to do with them. So I consulted the ancient texts. See, I never thought about it like that. Though helpful, I realized that reading about crop planting in a book and actually crop planting were two completely different ballgames. It was bad. In the first plan, we couldn't bring anything consistently to market, and the seeding plan was really weak. And I didn't even take into account the difference in days to maturity based on weather. By the next crop plan, I did a little better. The crop selection was definitely better, and the seeding plan was definitely better, but the other issues I ignored to fix. And then the most recent crop plan, I made this one about a week ago, and it is by far my best work. I put about 12 hours into it, but there's consistent supply of crops, days to maturity somewhat based on seasonality, and the seeding plan is dialed in. There's still a lot of work to be done, but this is what I've done so far, and I hope this kind of helps you out. I'm sure you might be asking yourself, how did you go from making a really bad crop plan to a slightly better one? Well, I'll let you know. The answer is simple. Research, and a lot of it. Now, this was just some of it, but what I decided was really important was naming what the crop was, the variety, days to maturity, days to transplant, and like the ideal temperature and just general information on it. And so pretty much I documented that all, and I was able to use that in the crop plan. Another thing I documented in the research was spacing and how many seeds I would need per bed. And we're planning or talking about doing 25 foot by 4 foot beds to really maximize the space we have. And so yeah, I planned for that. I did not research for the first crop plan, and that had a lot to do with why it wasn't great. There were many reasons, but it played a big part in it. In the second crop plan, I did the research beforehand, and then on the third crop plan, I really updated it and made the information variety specific and logged that in. Another change I made past my first crop plan was I added more information. I added when to seed, when to transplant, when to harvest, when to partially harvest, and I made keys for this so that it was easier for people looking at it to understand. The seeding and transplant symbols made the seeding plan a lot easier, but also having like the H for harvest, PH for partial harvest, and like I for interplant just made things simpler, and I think it'll make things simpler moving into the season. Now, these are all great things to think about when making your plan, but how did I actually do it? So to start, I made it a graph where on the y-axis I put the bed number, and on the x-axis I put time. And then using the crop seasonality section on my crop research, is the crops where they'd perform best. I added about a week for days to maturity at the beginning, at the end of the plan, and then during August, July, I subtracted about a week just because it's really hot and then it's going to be growing quicker. Though I didn't fully implement this, I did put crops that required more care earlier. Usually, some crops that were leafy greens that would have required a lot of care ended up in the bottom few beds, but for the most part, the earlier beds are the crops that require the most care. In my mind, that was fruiting crops like tomatoes, cucumbers, peas, peppers, but for you it might be totally different. And next I kind of went on to leafy greens, and then last I kind of had root crops. Next, let's talk about the seed plan. The seed plan was really easy for me to make on the newest rendition of the crop plan, but for the first two, it was pretty frustrating having to look up how many days till I can transplant it and like how far back I should push it on the calendar. It was just kind of a lot. So in the newest crop plan, I put an S for seeding at the beginning and a T for transplanting so that I always knew how long each thing was in the seed house for. I also added things like, we're doing soil blocks, so I added the size of soil block, I added how many seeds per block, and how many transplanted we needed, how many we should do to get the right amount due to some failures, and then how many total seeds per crop per week. So pretty much if I needed 3,600 seeds of carrots for a 4 foot by 25 foot bed. And so if we were seeding 2 beds of carrots that week, I would put 7,200 seeds needed for that week. I also included the spacing, which though not totally necessary, makes it so that if we're out in the field and all we have is like our computer and that, or like we printed out the crop plan and that's the only sheets we have, then it's easy just to reference it all in the same document. And I don't know, it was just simpler in my mind. I would like to end this video with saying, I am not the expert in crop plans. Actually, I know very little about crop planning, but that was kind of what this video was for, just kind of going over my learning process. And maybe I'm not an expert, but I'm definitely better than I was. And I would love to see your guys' journeys in crop planning and farming in general. And yeah, that's what this video is kind of about. So thanks for hanging out with me. And I'm going to leave you with these awesome mushrooms.